After coming back to life, I was excited to look for my husband, hoping I could continue the sweet bond we had shared in our previous life. But then I heard that he had fallen ill and lost his memory. Worried, I rushed to see him, only to witness Nathan Reed holding Megan Lane in his arms, embracing her affectionately. I was furious, but when I confronted him, he pushed me out the door. Where did this shameless crazy woman come from? The woman I love has always been Megan, he said. I couldn't accept it. I went everywhere searching for doctors, medicines, and even prayed desperately, until one day I accidentally overheard him talking with a friend. Nathan is about to get married, and he's pretending to have amnesia to turn Tessa Torres into a joke. Aren't you afraid she'll find out, get heartbroken, and leave? His friend asked. Nathan laughed confidently. You don't know how much Tessa loves me. She won't be able to leave. Besides, our families are connected, so I have to marry her. I just need to wait until Megan gives birth. After my son has a stable position, Tessa won't be able to use her family background to force Megan away. So Nathan Reed had also been reborn. Swallowing my tears, I turned away and called Daniel Carter. My wedding is missing a groom. Will you take the role? When I returned home, I began packing away all the gifts Nathan had ever given me. Bitterly, I put everything I had never let anyone touch into a box. If I had decided to leave him once and for all, then these things needed to be thrown away too. My mother cried beside me, and my father finally couldn't hold back anymore. Tessa, if you insist on being with Nathan Reed, then I'll humble myself and go to the Reed family. If I give them a few projects, they'll definitely change their minds. Looking at my parents' thin, worried faces, I slowly but firmly said, Mom, Dad, I'm not marrying Nathan Reed anymore. The moment I finished speaking, the crying of a woman echoed from outside. My parents and I hurried downstairs and saw Megan Lane kneeling at our doorstep, tears covering her face, with a large crowd already gathered. When she saw me, jealousy flashed in her eyes before she switched to a pitiful, pleading expression. Miss Torres, please don't separate me and Nathan. Don't drive me away, she cried. Her eyes were swollen red, her clothes were thin, and she knelt stubbornly, refusing to get up, which only made the bystanders feel more sympathy. My father's expression darkened as he sternly ordered the guards. Why aren't you dragging her away yet? If you can't even guard the gate next time, don't bother coming to work. While dodging the guards, Megan wailed miserably. Miss Torres, I'm just an orphan. I have no father, no mother. Nathan is all I have left. Please give him back to me. Nathan and I truly love each other. You have status and beauty, so why fight over a man who doesn't love you? And I'm pregnant with his child. Please, for the sake of this innocent baby, give the two of us a chance to survive. Seeing how pitiful she looked, the crowd began whispering. Young Master Reed already said he doesn't love her. Why is the Torres heiress being so stubborn? I heard she always used her family's power to bully others, and now she wants to push a pregnant woman to death? How cruel. Every word felt like a dagger stabbing my heart. Clearly Megan Lane was the third party, yet now I was the one being blamed for ruining their relationship. Seeing everyone taking her side, Megan secretly flashed me a triumphant smile before crying even louder. Miss Torres, with your background, you can find someone better than Nathan, but I'm an orphan, and I'm carrying his baby. Without him, all I have left is death. Then she bowed her head and slammed it onto the ground, kowtowing to me. I quickly reached out my hand to stop her. As soon as she lifted her head, Megan suddenly fell backward, clutching her stomach as she cried out in panic and begged, Miss Torres, I know you hate me, but the baby is innocent. I won't fight over Nathan anymore. Please just let me give birth to this child. I was just about to expose her lies when an angry shout exploded right above me, followed by a strong force shoving me hard to the ground. Tessa Torres, don't go too far. Nathan Reed yelled as he pushed me aside and rushed to help Megan Lane up with deep distress on his face. Megan, you don't have to beg her. The woman I love now is you. I would never marry a cruel woman like her. Megan's eyes welled up with tears as she spoke softly. Nathan, I'm the one who wronged Miss Torres. As long as she's willing to give us her blessing, I don't mind kneeling. Even if she wants to hit me, I'm willing to endure it. Nathan, moved by her words, pulled her tightly into his arms, his eyes filled with pity before he looked up at me with a glare full of hatred, as if he wished he could tear me apart. Tessa Torres, do you have no shame? I don't even know you, yet you cling to me so desperately. Are you really that desperate for a man? His sharp, mocking words filled my mouth with the bitter taste of blood, and my eyes burned red. In our previous life, he had sworn to love me until death, yet now he looked at me like I was his worst enemy. My father trembled with rage, pointing at Nathan as he yelled, "Nathan Reed, how dare you insult my daughter like that? I will make sure your family answers for this and teach you how to behave properly." Nathan stiffened for a moment but still stubbornly argued. Did I say anything wrong? If Tessa Torres hadn't kept pestering me, why would Megan have to kneel and beg? And Tessa even pushed her. Everyone here saw it. If my parents knew how vicious she is, they would have called off the engagement long ago. He then lowered his head and solemnly promised the woman in his arms, "Megan, don't worry. I won't let you or our baby suffer." Megan burst into grateful tears and hugged him tightly. Watching the two of them put on their affectionate little performance right in front of me, my heart turned completely cold. The Nathan Reed who once loved me so deeply, perhaps that love had always been nothing but a lie. I pulled my father's hand to stop him and spoke calmly. "Nathan Reed, let's cancel the engagement." The moment the words left my mouth, Nathan froze. His expression flickered with shock, and his voice suddenly became anxious. "Tessa Torres, do you really want to break off the engagement with me?" Seeing his reaction, I let out a mocking laugh. "Nathan Reed, you were never everything to me." I turned back into the house and retrieved a small box. Inside was the family heirloom jade pendant he had given me when he proposed. When he saw it, Nathan's pupils contracted and his voice trembled. "If you break off the engagement, you'll never be able to come back to me again. You'd better think carefully." I let out a cold laugh. "Isn't this exactly what you wanted? Or are you regretting it now?" Nathan's face darkened instantly, and he snapped, "I'm only afraid you'll shamelessly cling to me again." I replied firmly, "Never. I won't have anything to do with you for the rest of my life." But Nathan was clearly shaken now, his earlier false confidence completely gone. Megan was so excited that tears streamed down her face as she tugged at his sleeve. "Nathan, finally, we can openly be together." Yet Nathan gave no response, only staring blankly at me. I opened the box. "Since you want to cancel the engagement, let's do it cleanly. This jade pendant is what you used to propose to me. I'm returning it now, and I hope you'll return the bracelet I gave you." At the mention of the bracelet, a flicker of guilt flashed across Nathan's face. Nathan said, "I lost my memory, so I don't know which bracelet it is. Let me go home and look for it." I waved my hand dismissively. "No need. That bracelet is on Megan Lane's wrist right now. My initials are engraved inside. Young Master Reed, you're from the prestigious Reed family, yet you still want to keep something that isn't yours?" My parents immediately turned cold and glared at him. That bracelet was a coming-of-age gift from us to our daughter. "We waited 8 years for that beautiful gemstone," my father said. Nathan's face flushed red. He turned to glare at Megan Lane and ordered her to return the bracelet. Megan, greedy as ever, glanced at the jade pendant in my box, then touched the bracelet on her wrist as if she couldn't bear to part with it. Her voice trembled as she whispered to Nathan, "Nathan, I heard elders say that when a woman is newly pregnant, she shouldn't give away jewelry she's already wearing. It might affect the baby." Nathan looked anxiously at her belly, clearly troubled. "Back then, I had amnesia. I didn't know the bracelet belonged to you, so I gave it to Megan. She's pregnant now. I don't think you'd be unreasonable about this, right? Or, name your price. I'll buy it back." I stared at him coldly. The bracelet was a coming-of-age gift from my parents. It has great meaning. No matter how much money you offer, I won't sell it. Or is the Reed family planning to bully us and rob it openly? Hearing the sarcasm in my voice, Nathan's expression darkened. "Give it back to her. I'll buy you a better one later," he told Megan. She reluctantly removed the bracelet, her eyes full of pitiful resentment as she looked at both Nathan and me. Seeing me stand there with my arms folded, watching the scene with a mocking smile, she grew furious but still handed the bracelet over. "Miss Torres," she said bitterly, "I didn't expect you to be so petty over a bracelet. There was a flash of malice in her eyes as she added slowly, "You'd better hold it tight. If this bracelet gets lost, I'm not sure whether the jade pendant the Reed family used to establish the engagement might get lost too." Megan was seething, but she couldn't do anything. She had no choice but to hand the bracelet back carefully. As soon as she did, she suddenly let out a cry and collapsed to the ground. Thankfully, Nathan caught her just in time. Megan clung to his shirt, sobbing, "Nathan, don't be angry. I just lost my balance. Miss Torres didn't push me." Nathan glared at me with fury. "Tessa Torres, I thought you sincerely wanted to cancel the engagement. I didn't expect you to use dirty tricks to hurt Megan and the baby. You're disgusting." Megan clutched his sleeve tightly as tears streamed down her face. "Miss Torres, I know you haven't moved on from Nathan, so you're jealous of me. But I already bowed my head and apologized, yet you humiliate me again and again, and now you want to harm my child. You've gone too far." I looked at the two of them performing before me and said coldly, "I didn't touch you, Megan Lane. And I don't stoop so low as to fight over garbage like him. There are cameras here. If I call the police and someone is falsely accusing me, I'll sue to the very end." Megan's expression shifted instantly, and she looked at Nathan in panic. He shot her a meaningful glance before awkwardly saying to me, "Tessa, maybe you were just tense earlier, so Megan misunderstood. She's fine now, so let's just drop it." I cut him off sharply, "But I won't drop it. Apologize." Seeing my resolve, Megan lowered her head in shame. "I'm sorry, Miss Torres." I took the bracelet, and right before their shocked eyes, I smashed it hard against the floor. The bracelet shattered into pieces. "This bracelet is better broken," I said coldly, "than left on the wrist of a mistress." "My lawyer will send the papers to the Reed family," I said coldly. "Guards, see the guests out." After the chaos outside was finally over, my father let out a regretful sigh. Back then, seeing how much you two loved each other, I agreed to the engagement. Who would have thought he'd turn out so blind, unable to tell right from wrong? I've never misjudged anyone in my life, yet I was wrong about him. In my past life, I had lived with Nathan Reed for 65 years and still hadn't seen his true nature. That was how well he could hide it. My mother's eyes filled with tears again. "The wedding is in just a few days. We've already informed all the relatives and friends. If we cancel now, Tessa, what are you going to do?" I looked at my worried parents and smiled. "Don't worry, Mom, Dad. The wedding will still take place as planned, only the groom will be different." My parents respected my decision and threw themselves into preparing for the wedding again. The upper-class circles were all waiting to see me make a fool of myself. Some people even started betting on what would happen to me when the wedding day came and there was no groom. I didn't care about the gossip. I focused only on preparing to be a bride. The day I went to the bridal shop to try on my wedding dress with Daniel Carter, he called to say he had an urgent meeting and would be late. He even asked politely if I wanted to reschedule. I told him not to worry. The dress had arrived, so he could come after his meeting. I waited there, not expecting to run into the last people I wanted to see. The moment I stepped into the boutique, I heard that sharp, grating voice. "Miss Torres, you're here too?" Megan Lane sneered. "Don't tell me you're still unwilling to let go and came here to spy on us. Nathan knew we were coming to try on wedding outfits today. That's why you showed up, isn't it?" I didn't even spare her a glance. I went straight to the store manager, who greeted me warmly. I immediately asked the staff to bring out my wedding dress. When Megan saw it, her eyes lit up with jealousy. She couldn't help but mutter bitterly, "Miss Torres, no matter how beautiful your dress is, Nathan will never marry you. Why don't you just give the dress to me? I'll even compensate you." Then Nathan Reed's voice followed from behind her. "Tessa Torres, our engagement is over. Why are you still holding a wedding? Don't tell me you think acting pitiful will somehow force me to marry you." I sighed and looked helplessly at the store manager. Guess I must have forgotten to check the calendar today. Ran straight into 2 rabid dogs. "Please have the dress delivered to my house later, and also take my new groom's measurements for his tuxedo." I turned to leave, but Megan grabbed my arm, yelling hysterically, "I was here first. That wedding dress should be mine. Why did you give it to her?" The manager explained politely, "Miss Lane, this gown was custom ordered by Miss Torres 6 months ago. It was made to her exact measurements." But Megan refused to back down. I haven't tried it on yet. How do you know it doesn't fit me? Nathan, I really love this dress. If I could wear it to marry you, I'd die with no regrets. Nathan, acting all high and mighty, looked at me and ordered, Tessa Torres, no matter how much trouble you cause, I'll never marry you. Megan loves this dress. Consider it your good deed to give it to her. Take it as a favor, you'll still have me to remember. I turned my wrist and slapped him hard across the face. Nathan Reed, now I'm sure, you really are insane. He froze for a second, then completely lost control. Tessa Torres, you're unbelievable. I was afraid you'd be humiliated on your wedding day, so I planned to register my marriage with Megan first and still show up at the ceremony with you, for both our sakes. And now you dare act arrogant with me? After this, even if you kneel and beg, I'll never marry you. I was speechless, my mouth slightly open. The store manager and staff looked stunned, as if they had just swallowed flies. Seeing me silent, Nathan grew even more smug. Tessa Torres, even though I lost my memory, I still know one thing. You love me to death. You'll never marry anyone else. If I marry you, it's fine, Nathan said coldly, but my legal wife will be Megan. As for you, I'll give you a wedding ceremony, that's all. Megan is gentle and kind, you should treat her well. Megan Lane looked at me with hatred in her eyes, but her voice was soft and demure. Miss Torres, even though I'll be Nathan's wife, I won't stop you from being with him. If you ever have a child, I'll take care of it like my own. I couldn't hold it in anymore. I raised my hand and slapped Nathan Reed twice in a row. Nathan Reed, take a good look at yourself. Who do you think you are, wanting to enjoy the blessings of two women at once? What era do you think this is? The damn Qing dynasty. Nathan was stunned, dizzy from my slaps, unable to react for a moment before he exploded in anger. Tessa Torres, how dare you hit me? I gave you a chance to back down gracefully, and now you'll never get it again. You're a woman I've already used up. Let's see which fool would ever pick up secondhand trash like you. Then he turned to Megan with a gentle look. Megan, don't worry. You're the only one in my heart. Once our baby is born, I'll marry Tessa just for formality's sake, to end things properly. His self-righteous, fake romantic tone combined with that pig-faced expression made me so disgusted I actually gagged right on the spot. Nathan's face darkened immediately. Tessa Torres, you. I slapped him again. Just seeing your face makes me want to throw up. Nathan's face turned pale, then green, his jaw clenching tightly. Tessa Torres, we'll see how long you can act so high and mighty. You'd better think this through, while Megan is still pregnant. I didn't bother responding to his madness. I turned and walked away without looking back. After that, I poured all my energy into preparing for my wedding and refused to step outside. I didn't want to run into anyone who'd ruin my mood again. Perhaps unwilling to accept defeat, Nathan Reed also held a wedding with Megan Lane, and of all days, he chose the same date as mine. On their wedding day, Nathan stood outside the hotel entrance, greeting guests cheerfully. But he soon realized that the number of attendees was embarrassingly small. Even the influential figures he had personally invited merely sent representatives with gifts and didn't show up themselves. His assistant, after quietly checking around, returned to report hesitantly, "Sir, most of them went to attend Miss Torres's wedding." Nathan sneered. "What is Tessa Torres holding an open casting call for a husband or something?" The assistant clenched his teeth and blurted out the truth. Miss Torres married Daniel Carter, CEO of Carter Corporation. Nathan's expression twisted in rage. He grabbed the assistant by the collar. "What the hell did you just say? Tessa loves me too much for that. How could she possibly marry Daniel Carter?" The assistant was on the verge of tears, unsure how to respond. He had tried before to warn Nathan not to fake amnesia, but Nathan was so sure of himself, so convinced he had me completely under his control. Nathan's parents, believing he had genuinely lost his memory, and with Megan pregnant, had eventually just let him do whatever he wanted. Nathan's legs gave out as he collapsed to the floor, muttering in disbelief, "No, that's impossible. Tessa was supposed to marry me. We were meant to have two amazing kids and grow old together." The assistant spoke softly. "Sir, Miss Torres is already married. Your ceremony with Miss Lane is about to start. Please, stand up and pull yourself together. Your guests are waiting." Nathan seemed to snap out of a dream. He shoved the assistant away and staggered toward the door. Just as he reached it, Megan Lane came running, blocking his path. She threw her arms around his waist, sobbing desperately. "Nathan, today is our wedding day. Please don't go. After the ceremony, I promise I won't stop you from looking for Tessa. Just stay, please." Nathan's eyes turned bloodshot as he angrily pushed her away. "Get out of my way!" Nathan shouted. Megan clutched her stomach, crying out in agony. "Nathan, please don't go. Think of our baby." Nathan didn't even look back. His voice was cold and sharp. "The one thing I regret the most is ever keeping you and that child." Megan stared after his fading figure and broke down, sobbing uncontrollably until she nearly fainted. At that very moment, Daniel Carter slipped a ring onto my finger. But before we could even finish the ceremony, Nathan Reed stormed into the wedding hall, his face twisted in fury. "Tessa Torres, how could you marry another man? You're my fiancé, did you forget? We still have 2 outstanding children together. Don't you want them anymore?" The entire venue went dead silent for a second, then the guests erupted in whispers. "The Reeds are finished. Their only heir has gone completely insane." "Nathan Reed dares to fight Daniel Carter over a woman? Where does he get that kind of nerve? Wasn't today supposed to be his own wedding? Now he's crashing hers instead?" The murmurs grew louder, but Nathan didn't seem to hear any of it. He walked straight up and dropped to his knees in front of me. "Tessa, I'm sorry. I truly know I was wrong. Please, cancel your wedding with Daniel Carter and marry me instead." I held onto Daniel's arm and smiled mockingly. "Mr. Reed, didn't you lose your memory? Or is there something else wrong with your head now? Our engagement was canceled long ago. Between you and me, there's nothing, other than an arrangement between our families. If you continue spreading lies, I'll see you in court." Nathan looked at me in disbelief, his face pale. "Tessa, do you really not want me anymore? Back then I was sick, I didn't mean to hurt you. But I remember everything now. The one I love is you, the one I want to marry is you. Let's get married right now, please." I didn't want to waste another second on him. "Nathan Reed, drop the act already. You never lost your memory, you just used that as an excuse to cover up your affair." His face went as white as a sheet. His entire body trembled as he stammered. "Tessa, when did you find out? I can explain." I cut him off coldly. "Just seeing your face makes me sick. Don't ever appear in front of me again." I took Daniel's hand and turned to continue the ceremony. Daniel, who had been tense the whole time, suddenly tightened his grip on my fingers. Nathan completely lost it. "Daniel Carter, you knew Tessa was my fiancé, yet you still stole her from me. You don't deserve to be called a man. I beg you, give Tessa back to me. I'll trade you my shares in the Reed Corporation." Daniel let go of my hand. For a brief moment, Nathan's eyes lit up with desperate hope, until Daniel charged forward and slammed a fist straight into his face. "Nathan Reed," Daniel growled, punching him again, "I've been too damn patient with you. Otherwise, I'd have taken Tessa from you long ago. You hurt her once, and now you think you can buy her back with company stock? You're not even worthy of loving her." Nathan couldn't even fight back. He was beaten so badly he collapsed to the ground, groaning in pain. Watching him sprawled there pathetically, I couldn't help feeling a rush of satisfaction. When Daniel finally stopped, I took his hand again, ready to continue our wedding. Nathan lay on the floor, his eyes bloodshot, muttering desperately. "Tessa? The one I've always loved is you. I only pretended to lose my memory because Megan was pregnant. I wanted to wait until the baby was born so I could give it a name, give Megan some stability, and then I planned to tell you everything. As long as our love is real, what do these formalities matter, right? Tessa? You loved me so much. Why can't you understand me?" Daniel Carter had just calmed down, but when he heard Nathan's words, his anger flared again. I waved my hand coldly and ordered the guards to drag Nathan out. I didn't want my wedding to be ruined by him any further. Nathan Reed was forcibly pulled out by the guards, yet he refused to leave. He sat dazed in front of the hotel entrance, staring blankly into space. In the end, the Reed family had to come themselves, knocking him unconscious before taking him home. The guests, meanwhile, got quite a show. Everyone was gossiping excitedly, enjoying the drama as if it were the sweetest melon gossip they'd ever heard. After the guests finally left, Daniel took my hand tightly. His tone was serious yet possessive. "Tessa, I'll treat you well for the rest of my life. I won't give you even the slightest reason to regret marrying me." Looking at Daniel, my heart swelled with both warmth and sorrow. I had met him by chance. At that time, his mother had just passed away, and his father had brought his mistress and illegitimate child into their home openly. Daniel had collapsed on the street with a high fever, and coincidentally, I was on my way to see Nathan Reed back then. I ended up taking Daniel to the hospital. After he recovered, he went abroad. When he returned, he was already the man in charge of the Carter family empire. He sought me out, confessed his feelings honestly, and promised that he would wait for me. In my previous life, until the day I died, he never married. Whenever the Torres family faced difficulties, he always helped us silently behind the scenes. Thinking of that, I couldn't help but throw my arms around him. Daniel's eyes burned with emotion, like flames flickering in the dark. Meanwhile, Nathan Reed regained consciousness. He lay there staring blankly at the ceiling, lifeless, like a hollow shell. Megan Lane's face, once filled with resentment, quickly shifted into one of worry. "Nathan, you're finally awake. Do you know how scared I was for you? And our baby too. We almost lost it." But Nathan remained motionless, expressionless like a wooden puppet. Megan bit her lip and continued gently, "Nathan, Miss Torres is married now. Stop thinking about her. You still have me, and you have our child. We'll always be by your side." There was a sudden sharp sound, the sheets rustling violently as Nathan turned his head. His eyes were filled with savage fury as he glared at Megan. A second later, he lunged forward, pinning her beneath him, his hands wrapped tightly around her throat. His voice was cold and guttural, like it came straight from hell. "This is all your fault. If you hadn't seduced me, I never would have slept with you. If you hadn't manipulated me, I would never have broken off the engagement with Tessa. Without you, she would have forgiven me. She would have come back to me." Nathan grew more deranged with every word, his actions completely out of control. Megan struggled desperately, which only seemed to drive him further into madness. His grip tightened even more around her neck. Fortunately, the Reed family heard the commotion and burst into the room in time. They dragged him off her, saving her life by a thread. Megan curled up in the corner, trembling, her eyes filled with sheer terror as she stared at Nathan like she was staring at a demon. Nathan was restrained on the bed by his family. Seeing Megan's pitiful expression only made him roar louder. "It's because of that fake, pitiful face of yours that I was fooled. The only reason I went to you in the first place was out of guilt. In our previous life, you were the one who seduced me. You made me lose control and sleep with you. Then when you got pregnant, you cried every day, whispering that Tessa would use her family's power to drive you and the baby away. You knelt and begged me to give you and the child a name, swearing you'd leave once you gave birth. Thinking of my regrets from before, I was blind enough to believe you." Now that everything had come rushing back, Nathan wanted nothing more than to slap himself to death. Grinding his teeth, he glared venomously at Megan and spat, "If it weren't for you, I never would have become like this with Tessa. For the rest of your life, don't ever appear in front of me again. If you do, I'll kill you myself." Daniel had to go to the company to handle some urgent work, so I went home alone. I didn't expect that as soon as I arrived at the gate, I'd see Nathan Reed standing there waiting. I had no idea how long he'd been there. His hair was a mess, his clothes were wrinkled, and he'd lost so much weight that he looked gaunt and pitiful. The moment he saw me, he rushed forward and clung to my car, startling the driver so much that he didn't dare move. With no other choice, I stepped out of the vehicle. "Tessa, I'm sorry," he said, his voice trembling. "This was the only way I could get you to talk to me." I frowned in disgust and stepped back. "There's nothing left for us to talk about." Nathan's expression twisted, full of conflict. "Tessa, you might not believe me, but I've been reborn. In our previous life, we loved each other deeply. We had a pair of wonderful twins. Our son was smart and mature, and our daughter was gentle and kind. We handed over the company to them and traveled the world together. When I died, we even promised to be together for eternity, in every lifetime." As he spoke, his face lit up with joy and self-assurance. "Tessa, you only married Daniel because you don't remember our past life. But that's fine. I don't blame you. As long as you divorce Daniel now, we can get married again. I won't care that you've been divorced." I looked at him mockingly. You said we were married in our past life, right? Then what about Megan Lane? And what about the baby? Nathan froze, stammering. That? You forgave me for that. Megan and the child were sent abroad. After that incident, we grew even closer, more certain of our love for each other. We cherished one another even more. I didn't reply. I just stared at him in silence, my gaze sharp and unrelenting. His confidence began to falter, and his eyes darted nervously. Tessa, don't you believe me? He asked desperately. Think about it. Our feelings for each other since we were young. How could you just throw them away like that? I stepped closer. Hope flickered in his eyes, right before I slapped him 3 times in a row. Nathan Reed, I said coldly. If you hadn't claimed to be reborn, I might have actually forgiven you. But you clearly had memories of your past life, and the moment you came back, you went straight to Megan Lane. You pretended to have amnesia just to cover up your affair, turning me into a joke and trampling all over my love for you. And now you stand here, playing the part of a regretful lover? Every time I think of our past life, I feel sick to my stomach. Nathan's last shred of hope trembled in his voice as he asked, Tessa, you were reborn too? I gave a slight nod. Nathan's entire world collapsed in that instant. No wonder, he whispered. No wonder you married Daniel Carter. Then his face darkened as he grabbed my wrist, his expression twisting into something feral. Tessa Torres, you were reborn too. Why didn't you tell me? If you'd told me earlier, then... I cut him off icily. If I'd told you earlier, you wouldn't have broken off our engagement, right? And just like in our last life, you would have secretly hated me for ruining your little love story with Megan Lane, then spent the rest of your life trying to make the Torres family suffer. Isn't that what you mean? No, that's not it, Tessa. I was deceived. Nathan blurted out, trying to defend himself, but soon his voice turned bitter, like a wounded animal. Tessa Torres, don't you think you're also at fault? You knew I misunderstood you, but you didn't explain. You rushed to marry Daniel Carter right after. Wasn't it because the two of you already had something going on in your past life? No wonder he always showed up to help your family. You cheap woman. You betrayed me. Smack! I slapped him again, this time with all my strength. The red imprint of my hand stood out clearly on his face. Nathan Reed, I said through clenched teeth, you cheated, and yet you think everyone else is as filthy as you are? I must have been blind in my past life to spend a lifetime with a man like you. You are the biggest stain in my entire existence. Nathan completely broke down, his voice trembling as he begged. Tessa, I know I was wrong. Truly. Please, think about it. You know how much I loved you in our past life. He said, I only made one mistake, the kind any man could make. Do you really hate me that much for it? We've shared 2 lifetimes together, Tessa. What about our children? Are you really willing to let them never be born? I shoved him away, my face as cold as ice. Everything related to you disgusts me, including that child. My words hit him like lightning. Nathan Reed staggered, then collapsed to the ground, clutching his head and sobbing like a broken man. He could only sit there on the pavement, crying helplessly as he watched me walk away without looking back. When Nathan finally returned to the Reed mansion, he looked like a ghost, pale, hollow, and lifeless. As soon as he stepped inside, he saw Megan Lane gently caressing her belly. The moment she noticed him, her hand froze for a second, but she quickly forced a soft smile and walked over. You're home, she said sweetly. The baby's been really good lately. He only says he misses his daddy sometimes. Come on, touch my belly, feel our child. Nathan stared coldly at her stomach, his eyes strange and unreadable. The intensity of his gaze made Megan uneasy. She instinctively wrapped her arms around her belly and stepped back cautiously. Has it been hard, carrying the baby? He asked suddenly. The unexpected question made Megan's heart skip a beat. Thinking he was finally softening, she reached out to take his hand and whispered coyly, As long as it's our child, I can bear any hardship. Seeing his expression relax slightly, Megan mustered her courage and continued. Nathan, Tessa just canceled her engagement with you and married Daniel Carter. They must have been secretly involved long ago. You don't have to feel bad because of a woman like her. She's unfaithful and will face her own karma soon. Nathan's gaze slowly drifted up to her neck, and the next second, his hand shot out and wrapped tightly around her throat. Who gave you the right to insult Tessa? he growled. "The only reason I couldn't marry her was because of you. And that child. Don't worry, I won't kill you, but I'll make sure you live the rest of your miserable life in pain, to atone for your sins." With that, Nathan shoved Megan hard to the floor and began kicking her stomach again and again. She screamed in agony, clutching her belly as blood quickly pooled beneath her. No longer pretending to be gentle, Megan shrieked in hatred. "You always blame me. You came to me first. Did I force you to take your clothes off and get into bed with me? You couldn't control yourself, and now you're blaming me? Pretending to lose your memory, breaking off the engagement. It was all your choice. It had nothing to do with me. Now that Tessa doesn't want you anymore, you're just getting what you deserve. It's your retribution. I curse you. May you never know love again in any lifetime." Her words shattered the last bit of self-deception Nathan had left. He snapped completely, lunging at her and beating her mercilessly. Megan fought back desperately, and during the struggle, Nathan's head struck the edge of a table with a sickening crack. Blood gushed down his face. Their assistant was the first to find them and called for an ambulance. Megan miscarried due to severe abdominal trauma and lost the baby. Nathan suffered serious damage to his left eye. He would never see light from it again. Knowing that the Reed family would never forgive her, Megan went online and live-streamed everything, exposing Nathan's abuse. She also handed over confidential documents she had secretly stolen to one of the Reed's business rivals in exchange for protection. While Nathan was still hospitalized, Reed Corporation completely collapsed. By the time he was discharged, the company had already been taken over. His parents were expelled from their mansion, forced to crowd into a small, shabby apartment. They even went to my parents, begging for help, hoping for mercy out of old family ties. But my father only looked at them coldly and said, "The moment you let Nathan hurt my daughter, there was nothing left to say between our families." The Reeds could only leave in shame. As the scandals surrounding Reed Corporation continued to erupt, the Carter Group officially announced its complete acquisition of the company. Reed Corporation, once a towering name in the business world, was now utterly finished. That night at dinner, Daniel Carter was in such a good mood that he even had an extra serving. I couldn't help but laugh, both amused and surprised. It turned out that he'd been staying up late and waking up early these days to completely crush Reed Corporation. Daniel took my hand and gently caressed it, but there was a ruthless gleam in his eyes. "Anyone who's ever hurt you, I'll never let them go unpunished. Nathan Reed dared to touch you, I'll wipe out the entire Reed family from the roots." I nodded softly, and before I could respond, he continued, "I hired teams to boost the online buzz and got a full crew of influencers involved. By tomorrow, the entire internet will be laughing at Nathan Reed and Megan Lane. Once people find out Megan was actually the homewrecker, all the sympathy she got will turn into pure hatred." Then he paused, looking at me cautiously. "Tessa, do you think I'm being too cruel?" I nestled into his arms and looked up to plant a light kiss on his lips. "You did all of this for me. How could I ever blame you? I'm only more touched and more in love with you." Hearing that, Daniel's arms tightened around me, and he lowered his head to kiss me again, biting gently at my lip. "Tessa, I love you." Under Daniel's meticulously planned revenge, the Reed family was completely destroyed, reduced to nothing but pitiful strays. They scrambled everywhere, desperately searching for a place to hide. Even their last home had to be sold off to pay their debts. Nathan Reed, unable to afford further medical treatment, was left half-blind. No one would hire him anymore. In the end, he survived by scavenging trash to stay alive. The last I heard of him, he had gone insane. Every day he screamed and cried, begging to die, muttering over and over, "I want to be reborn. I want to start over again." As for Megan Lane, after being torn apart by public outrage online, she fled back to her rural hometown. Her grandparents, seeing that she was no longer useful, sold her to an old widower in the mountains, a man notorious for his violent temper. When the entire Reed family's downfall finally came to an end, Daniel surprised me by organizing a grand proposal ceremony. He said, "Whatever others have, you'll have too. And whatever others don't have, if you want it, I'll make sure you get it." He knelt before me, surrounded by a sea of flowers, his eyes full of sincerity and devotion. Tessa Taurus, he said, will you marry me? Looking at the man who had loved me across 2 lifetimes, I smiled brightly. I will. As the applause echoed around us and flower petals fluttered through the air, I looked at Daniel, at the man who had stood by me through 2 lifetimes, through betrayal, pain, and rebirth, and felt an overwhelming sense of peace. In my past life, I had wasted years chasing after the wrong man, believing love meant sacrifice. But this time, I finally understood that real love isn't about begging to be chosen. It's about finding someone who would burn the world down just to keep you safe. Nathan Reed had become nothing more than a ghost of the past, a shadow swallowed by his own greed and lies. Megan Lane vanished from everyone's memory, her name forever stained. And as for me, I was finally free. Daniel slid the ring onto my finger and whispered, "From now on, you'll never have to face anything alone again." I smiled through my tears and rested my head against his chest. Outside, the night sky bloomed with fireworks, reflecting off the glass walls like 1,000 stars blessing our new beginning. This time, there would be no regrets, no betrayal, only the quiet certainty that I had found my forever. And in this lifetime, I finally learned that sometimes, love isn't about finding the one you can't live without. It's about finding the one who refuses to live without you.